please stand with me this morning and take your Bibles and turn in them to Exodus chapter 27 for this morning's reading. Exodus chapter 27. For this morning's reading, I'll be reading verses 9 through 19 from Exodus 27. That's on page 67 if you're using one of the Pew Bibles. Please follow along with me as I read. You shall make the court of the tabernacle. On the south side, the court shall have hangings of fine twined linen, 100 cubits long for one side. Its 20 pillars and their 20 bases shall be of bronze, but the hooks of the pillars and their fillets shall be of silver. And likewise for its length, on the north side there shall be hangings 100 cubits long, its pillars 20 and their bases 20 of bronze, but the hooks of the pillars and their fillets shall be of silver. And for the breadth of the court on the west side there shall be hangings for 50 cubits, with 10 pillars and 10 bases. The breadth of the court on the front to the east shall be 50 cubits. The hangings for the one side of the gate shall be 15 cubits, with their 3 pillars and their 3 bases. On the other side, the hangings shall be 15 cubits, with their 3 pillars and 3 bases. For the gate of the court there shall be a screen 20 cubits long of blue and purple and scarlet yarns and fine twined linen embroidered with needlework. It shall have 4 pillars, and with them 4 bases. All the pillars around the court shall be filleted with silver. Their hooks shall be of silver, and their bases of bronze. The length of the court shall be 100 cubits, and breadth 50, and the height 5 cubits, with hangings of fine twined linen and bases of bronze. All the utensils of the tabernacle for every use, and all its pegs, and all the pegs of the court shall be of bronze. May the Lord add his blessing to the reading of his word. You may be seated. Want to give a brief outline of this morning's message so that you can track with us as we go. The outline will follow these 3 primary points, which starts with his art. Specifically, we'll be talking about the court today in regard to his art. Then we'll talk about his movement, and then we'll talk about Christ and us. So his art, his movement, and Christ and us. I'm going to kind of give a summary point for this morning just so that you can kind of follow. Our track through this morning's study is going to be a bit unorthodox, not in terms of doctrine, but maybe in terms of a sermon you've heard before. But we're going to be talking about the outer court in this morning's message. So this is, and let me make sure I'm doing this right here. Let me see. Okay, there we go. So, the outer court. So, this is what we're going to be talking about today. That big rectangle, the outer court around the Holy of Holies and the holy place. And the main message this morning is that outer court is to be understood as the world. The world. That the glory within the Holy of Holies is meant to go out into the world. And I'm having trouble with the clicker, so I'm not sure if it's me. There we go. Hopefully it's the clicker. We'll see. So, the Holy of Holies, there where the Ark of the Covenant is meant to go out to the outer court, which is representative of the world. So, that's the long and short of this morning's message. If you got that, you kind of got the gist of the message. His glory is meant to move out into the world. That's the idea. Now let's look at that in detail form. And in order to do that, let's start with His art. What we're discussing today is a piece of art. It's a piece of architectural art. We've talked about how all architecture has a degree of art in it. We want it to be beautiful to a greater or lesser extent. This is no different. God's art, His architecture, is beautiful, but it has a message. And this is really hard for us in the West to understand because we don't think in terms of symbol or art. Maybe the closest we get to that is at a wedding. We've talked about that before, where there's lots of symbolic things like a ring, like a father walking his daughter down the aisle, like a kiss. That's two flesh becoming one flesh in a kiss, correct? Right? So there's all kinds of symbolism that communicate reality, truth. This is the idea. This is what art does. Art communicates reality, or what the artist thinks is reality. And God's art is no different. So we have a piece of architectural art, but in the West, we tend to think in terms of science and doctrine and definition. We want answers for our mind versus working toward those answers with our senses. Do you hear that? We want answers for our mind before we learn how to get to answers using our senses. This is how God works. He works through our senses to the mind. We want to start with the mind. God doesn't do that. For some reason, He doesn't do it. He starts the Bible with images, not with definitions. He doesn't start with doctrine. He starts with pictures, geography. That's how He starts. This is tough for us as Westerners. We're very impatient, aren't we? We value efficiency. We don't value observation as much. But that's how God works. His tent is a visual, spatial, symbolic, oriented to the senses of touch and taste and smell, even heat. He tells stories. And He does all of these things before He ever gets to rational, analytical thinking. He starts with these things. But we, as I've said, value efficiency over exploration. And that's not how God works. We need to understand that this is a huge hurdle for the West when you approach the Bible. We say, tell me what to think, instead of teach me how to think. But that's not how the Bible works. Not even close to how the Bible works. If you approach the Bible in that way, you will end up with a very truncated view of God and of Christ and of the Holy Spirit. Listen to what the Proverbs say. It is the glory of God to conceal things. It's the glory of God to hide things. Think about that. You get on Amazon and you look for a devotional and you'll find 3 to 5 minutes to start your day with God. Right? Give it to me. Give it to me quick. And I got to move on. God says, meditate on me, on my law, day and night. That's a slower process. That's a chew process. That's not a fast food process. That's a marinade. That's a cook. That's an oven. That's not a microwave. This is a crock pot sort of meal. This Bible, it's a chew on this. This is to occupy your mind. And we've talked about how the tabernacle faces east where the sun rises, and the Holy of Holies is in the west where the sun sets. And this is a visual image of start the day pondering me and pondering me throughout the day. And the psalmist will say, I think about you in the watches of the night. I think on your law. So what this tells us is that in these first 5 books of the Bible, it's like you're walking through a river and you're looking for bits of gold, or you're walking through rock and you're looking for outcroppings of gold or silver or copper, and you're saying, okay, if something's there, then there's something deeper. This is how the Bible is written. It's not easy. It's not easy. You're meant to pursue it, to chase it, to start mining it. This is exactly how it talks. It's the glory of kings to search it out. And look at what Proverbs says. If you call out for insight and raise your voice for understanding. Listen, just stop right there for a second. When do you call out? When do you raise your voice? Just stop right there. We were on the golf retreat with the men this weekend, and in my backswing, I realized that the buddies in front of me were driving in a way that I didn't expect them to drive on their cart. Danny Meyer's shaking his head because I hit him with the golf ball. Now, it bounced first, so don't feel too bad for him. But as I hit and I looked up and I see the carts were not going where I thought they were going to go, I called out. I screamed. Why? Because there was a problem. There was a need for stress, right? And God says, when you read my word, that's how you need to be. Help me! I want to get this. You might be studying for a class in college or a tough class in high school, and you're like, I need help on this. This is calling out. You want more. You need help in getting more. And God says, this is how my word is. If you seek it like silver and search for it as hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. We want stuff handed to us, but that's not how God did it. But if you approach His word on His terms, you'll find that it's so incredible that you'll be like the psalmist who wakes up in the night and starts putting connections together. You'll be like that. It will be addictive. It will be to the point where you say, I'll give away anything so I can get more of this. It's like a treasure hidden in the field. Man found it, buried it back up, went and sold all his possessions so he could dig up that treasure and get that field for himself. It's that special that the stuff of earth will become increasingly less desirable in view of the surpassing greatness that you find in Jesus Christ, who unites all things together from this book. All this stuff, all this imagery, all these objects are simply variations on His character, on His person. He's that incredible. He's like a diamond that shoots out from a million different angles, glorious light. That's who our Savior is. The Bible says He's so incredible that I'll give you this Old Testament and all these varying ways to view Him, to understand His depth, His richness, His width and breadth, all of it. It's just incredible. The law of your mouth is better to me than thousands of gold and silver pieces. Friends, listen. You have to ask yourself the question, is this hyperbole or is it true? You have to ask that question. Are these just ultra-spiritual guys, or are they people like you and me that when they begin to taste how the law was meant to be studied, they start saying, oh my goodness, the stuff of earth becomes increasingly dim compared to the light that I find in Jesus Christ? You have to ask yourself the question, is this spiritual hyperbole or is it literal fact? That your wallets and your purses and your possessions and your homes and your holiday will become increasingly less chaste than the glory of Christ. I don't think this is spiritual hyperbole. I think this is literal fact. That this person is just like you and me, in all of your temptations and your sin. And they've come to see God through the lens through which He's called to be seen, us to see Him, and they said, I've never found anything like this. He's incredible. It's how Paul did it. He says, I accomplished the sealing of my nation. What my nation said chase after, I chased after it with everything I had, and I attained it. I had all my brothers, and I count it as he uses a word for what you flush down the toilet. In view of the surpassing greatness of Jesus Christ. So, this is what we do with God's law. We say, okay, we approach it knowing that things are hidden and need to be discovered, that need to be meditated on and digested with the mind. And that's how we're going to piece together this miraculous book. And so that's what we want to do this morning. His art. We want to consider it. So, as we do, let's move into our second point in his movement. Now, I'm going to use a familiar illustration to many of you. And that is, we're going to break out our, what is this? Mount what? Mount Sinai. That's where we're at in Exodus, okay? Picture this as Mount Sinai, all right? Now, we're not trying to be novel here. We're trying to understand the text the way it was meant to be understood. So, Mount Sinai. Israel is redeemed out of Egypt, and they're brought to Mount Sinai. As they're redeemed, God had Moses say to Pharaoh, "Let my people go that they may come and worship me." Serve me is the word. It's the word that was used of what they were doing for Pharaoh, and now it's to serve or worship him. So he brings them to a mountain, which is a familiar image we'll talk about in a bit. And so they get to Mount Sinai, and Exodus 19 through 24 are very significant chapters in the book. In Exodus 19 it says, "If you so much as touch this mountain, you're to be killed." Psalm 15 and 24 asks the question, who is able to ascend his holy hill? That's Sinai. That's the mountain. Who's able to ascend this? That's the question the psalmist asks. Well, Exodus answers that question. They say, don't touch this mountain or you'll die. And then you get an idea of why you'll die. Because right after he says that, he gives them the law. Perfection. What true love looks like as we fulfill the Ten Commandments. It can all be boiled down to loving God and loving neighbor. What love actually looks like. And so he gives them the law. And so the idea is touching the mountain you die because you can't fulfill the law. That's what kills you. His holiness kills you. It's contagious. It's like electricity. This is like the nuclear power plant of glory. So if you're not prepared for it, you touch it, you get incinerated. This is what it's like. Not because it's bad, but because it's so good. That's the idea. And so, right after he gives them the Ten Commandments, God knows who he's talking to. He knows his audience. So then he introduces them an altar. An altar. Okay? So, you get introduced to this altar, and then some of the Ten Commandments get unpacked, which is in the Book of the Covenant. And the way they get unpacked is to say, look, these are 10 words, 10 laws, but these laws, if you get them right, will apply to every one of life's situations. So the 10 Commandments are essentially these versatile commands that can apply to any situation you're in, whatever it is. Relationships, land, all this sort of stuff. It applies to everything. The 10 words can be extrapolated to apply to every situation you could possibly think of. The Word of God is not far away. It's right in your midst. It applies to everything you deal with, even right now and when you leave this place. It applies to everything. So he shows that the law is not just this esoteric, ethereal things. It's very practical. He does that in the Book of the Covenant. He shows how the Ten Commandments can have drop-downs for all of life. And then he has the 70 leaders ascend the mountain. But before he does that, he has Moses build an altar and make a sacrifice. He has 12 pillars, which represent the 12 tribes. He takes the sacrifice, sprinkles blood on those 12 pillars, which represent the tribe. Now, the 12 tribes, now the elders can ascend the mountain. Why? Not because they fulfilled the covenant, but because they've been made alive. How did they get made alive? What is blood? Blood is not something gross that you move away from in the Bible. What is blood in the Bible? It's life. They've been sprinkled with life. Life is in the blood. Life is in the blood. They've been sprinkled as through the pillars. They've been sprinkled with life. Now the 70 elders, the leaders of Israel, they represent Israel, are able to ascend halfway up Sinai and eat with God, eat and drink with God. Moses alone can ascend to the top. So this is the idea. And what we've talked about is that the rest of Israel has to remain at the bottom. And what this turns into is the tabernacle is a portable Mount Sinai. The tabernacle is an architectural mountain. And so what you have in the God's tent is you have the holy place is halfway up where the elders ate. The Holy of Holies is at the tip where only the high priest can go once a year like Moses did. And then you have the outer court, which is where Israel is. Okay. And that is the concept of God's tent. 70 elders represent Jacob's 70 people coming up or leaving Canaan and going to Egypt. This is the idea. They're a new creation, mirroring the 70 nations in Genesis 10. Israel's a new creation, what God's working. Now, we have an architectural temple, but this is not the first time, or an architectural mountain, but this is not the first time we've encountered that in the law. Sinai is not the first mountain that we've encountered in the law. We've encountered another thing very similar to that. What is that? This is nothing new. God's not originating something here. He's continuing something. Do you remember the ark? Remember Noah's ark, right? Do you remember, well, first of all, just a quick reminder here. How many sections are there of the God's tent, the tabernacle? How many sections? 3 sections. Holy of Holies, holy place, outer court, right? How many levels did Noah's ark have? 3. We get very familiar measurements for the tabernacle. Where else do we see that? Very specific measurements for the ark, right? 3 stories, just like 3 compartments here, or stories for the architectural mountain, okay? When Noah gets in the ark, where is he taken? He's taken very, 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 what? High, right? Above the highest mountain, right? And then where does he land? On a mountain. Okay, what does he do when he lands there? First thing, he makes an animal sacrifice. All the animals go into the ark. What did Israel leave Egypt with? A lot of animals, right? It's how they make sacrifices. Okay? Now, another commonality, you've got Noah and his family. It's a small group of people. What is Israel as they go out of Egypt? Well, they've grown to be a large group of people, but they started at 70, and they're still a small nation within the world. They're a small group of people, but all of this has worldwide implications. Noah comes off the ark. He gets the same command that Adam gets, okay? Israel is also supposed to go out into all the world, all right? This is the idea. The outer court represents worldwide implications. Now, so this is seen in the ark, but is it the first time we've been accustomed to a 3-story concept? No, it's not. When we go back to the beginning of creation, we find Eden. And what flows out of Eden? A river. And where do rivers flow? Down. So it goes through the garden, and then it goes out into the world. This is another 3-story concept. And you say, okay, so you've got Eden and then the garden with Eden that was placed to the east, and then out of that flows this river that goes out into the world. You see this. Now, is this the first time that we've seen 3 movements of Eden, garden, world? No, it's not original. It goes back to, see if you find 3 sections in this. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Do you see 3 sections there? We do, right? You've got the heavens, you've got the earth, and you've got the waters beneath the earth. This concept, this three-story concept of creation, will be carried throughout the Bible. It's even in the passage that we sang. These songs were so appropriate this morning. From Revelation, is anyone worthy? That passage goes through, there's no one found worthy in heavens, on earth, or beneath the earth. There's no one found worthy. These three layers to the earth are found throughout the Bible. Paul says of Christ that everything will be obedient to him in the heavens above, on the earth beneath, and underneath the earth. They'll all obey Christ. This is the idea. So what we find is that from the very beginning, we have this movement of top down, that heaven needs to come to earth and even beneath the earth. It's moving down. The Hebrew word for glory means heavy. It means heavy. It means weighty. And so gravity serves as helping us understand how missions works. Missions. Like you going out into all the world. Why? Water. Well, water has weight to it. And what does that do? What does gravity do with the water? It moves it down. So God's glory has weight. God's glory has weight. Say that with me. God's glory has weight. It is the weightiest thing in your life, whether you acknowledge it or whether you don't. If you're acknowledging something else as more weighty than God, you're not just sinning, you're wrong. You're wrong. It's not the weightiest thing. Whatever you're pursuing with all your might, if it's not God, you're pursuing the wrong thing. It's not weighty. It's not substantial. It will not be good for you. It will destroy you. It's not just bad. It will kill you. It'll kill you. Don't chase it. Nothing except God. And it's so easy to do. He's made so many wondrous things. But they're all just little snippets of who He is, of what He's like. So, glory moves down from the beginning of the Bible. And so, what we find in the beginning of the Bible is God's glory being demonstrated. And here's how it works. We start the Bible, and God says that Moses tells you that God created the heavens and the earth. But there was an obstacle to the earth, and God inserted this obstacle. It's not like it was an obstacle to God. He made it this way for a reason. And there's an obstacle to the earth being everything it should be. And I would say there's like three obstacles, but He tells you that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. Deep. Okay, so you've got darkness and you've got deep, you've got formlessness and void, but the water and the darkness is kind of making it formless and void, okay? So the water and the darkness kind of rise to the top as not an enemy, because they're not sinful, but an obstacle, you could say, to creation being everything it should. And so, this is God's first obstacle, that He wants to show you what He's like by giving you this obstacle. Just like in The Lone Ranger, the show starts out with the untamable horse, right? And those of you who are older than me, help me remember the name of him. Silver, right? Silver is untamable. Nobody wants to touch him. He's just too wild. But the Lone Ranger tames him. And that becomes a microcosm of what you can expect for the rest of the show. That the Lone Ranger will encounter difficult things, and what will he do? He'll overcome. Okay? So, we start the Bible with this untamable force, namely the deep. The deep. And the way the creation narrative ends is that the deep is turned into, what's the last water you see in the creation narrative? The lands get separated from the water. There's that. But what's the very last water you see in the creation narrative before everything goes bad? We've already mentioned it before. So God carves out a special place for man. Okay? And then He puts a garden within that place. And then He tells you a little something about the first place, Eden. A river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and there it divided and became 4 rivers. Okay? So, just think big picture in the creation narrative. It starts off with ominous water and darkness, and by the end of the creation narrative, that water has been channeled into a river that's so vast, it breaks into 4 rivers. And what you'll find when you read the rest of the Bible is that the Bible will frequently speak of the 4 corners of the earth. So, the altar, remember, has 4 corners, and those 4 corners get attention. So, out of this river, the entirety of the planet is taken care of in a liquid sense, in a water sense. This river flowing out of Eden waters the 4 corners of the earth. If you'd like to see passages that speak of the 4 corners of the earth, they're on the screen there. And so, this is the idea that as heaven comes to earth, it will take the glory of heaven and it will spread it out all over the earth. And these rivers are an indication of that out of Eden, where God is, this river will flow and it will go to the very ends of the earth. And that becomes a picture of what Adam was supposed to do with God's glory. He was to take God's glory and he was to go out of the earth, and you'll find that right outside of the Garden of Eden were places like Havilah, where it says the gold was good. And you get, and there's onyx stones and this sort of thing. And so you get the idea that Adam and Eve were to go out of the glory place and bring glory into it and start building a house for God. And this was supposed to spread and spread and spread and spread until the glory of God covered the earth the way the waters cover the sea. That's the idea. That's the mission. Right from the very beginning, there is a Holy of Holies. The tabernacle is just going back to what God started with heaven and earth. So out of God's glory, the earth gets covered with glory. That's the idea. Now, unfortunately, that's not how it works. Instead, sin spreads from the garden, and it starts working its way out of the garden into Cain, and Cain's moved further. Adam and Eve are expelled from the garden. Cain's moved further from the garden. And then Cain's sin, as you trace it, it begins going through what? The entirety of the world. And now we get introduced once again to the world's original obstacle. And what was the world's original obstacle? Water. Right? And what happens with Cain's sin? It culminates in the flood. The earth is once again covered with water. And so, this is where we begin to see people's sin be kind of commingled with water. Okay, now this is a stretch for us. But remember, where's God's glory? It's in things that are hidden. Have I lost you already? Have I lost you? Listen. You're like, okay, yeah, I guess I see a little bit. Does it continue? Yes, it continues. How does Israel leave Egypt? You got the plagues. You know you got the plagues. And he takes them through the Red Sea. What happens with the sinful Egyptians? They become buried in the water. Okay? So, what we begin to see is that specifically the Gentiles, not God's people, not God's chosen people, us, are frequently associated with bad water. Like tumultuous, raging water that is opposed to the kingdom of God. The Bible will talk about the ocean wanting to take back the land. Okay? This is what you see with the Gentiles. You see it in the flood, but then you see it specifically with Egypt and going into the Red Sea. I'm just going to give you a sampling, and I want you to know I could have made this shorter, but I could have also made it much, much longer. Who stills the roaring of the seas, the roaring of their waves, the tumult of the peoples, so that those who dwell at the ends of the earth are in awe of your signs? What is this? It's the roaring of the seas, it's the waves, it's the tumult. And this is equated with the world, the ocean, the world, the scary ocean. Ah, the thunder of the many peoples. They thunder like the thundering of the sea. Ah, the roar of the nations. They roar like the roaring of mighty waters. The nations roar like the roaring of mighty waters. But he will rebuke them, and they will flee far away. And there will be signs in sun and moon and stars, and the earth, and on the earth distress of nations in perplexity, because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. Christ makes an association there. Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and the four great beasts came out of the sea, different from one another. Bad things are in the sea. Revelation, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea. Pharaoh himself will be equated with like Rahab, Leviathan, the bad sea monsters. Okay, so this is what we see. Now, what we find is that the courtyard is meant to be seen as this waters beneath the earth. Remember, that God's tent is multivalent. You can see it through many different angles as He intended. And this is the idea. It's the place where heaven and fellowship with God is meeting the tumultuous waters. This is the idea, but God is going to do this. And you see the blue curtains as you enter the courtyard are matching the blue curtains at the holy place where there's a table and where there's aged wine and bread. And so what you have is that the world was meant to meet with God in coming into this courtyard. Even Gentiles could enter this courtyard, the law specifies. So this is the place where God's glory meets the world. We've talked about, for our retirement wilderness trip, getting canoes in the Mississippi, right in the Quad Cities here, and canoeing down to the Gulf of Mexico, okay? It would take a month, all right? That's at our age now, so I haven't quite calculated how we'll feel when we're retired. But it'd take a month. But I'll tell you exactly when Ben Lovelady wants to get out of the Mississippi River, more than ever. When it meets the place where there's sharks, okay? That's when I want to get out of the river, okay? And so this is kind of like where the glory meets the world. It's where the two meet, okay? Where God meets us. Now, how do we see this? How do we see this? Well, how was this tent built? What was it built with? Where'd slaves get gold and silver and bronze and this stuff that took thousands of mollusks to get dyed to make these beautiful curtains? This stuff was incredibly costly. Where did these poor people get that stuff? The Egyptians. What are the Egyptians? They're the Gentiles, right? They're the world. They're the world. So this was built out of the world stuff. Okay? Now, what will happen when Solomon builds the temple? Where did Solomon get the stuff? Well, he got it from his dad, David. Where did David get the stuff? The text is very specific. He got it from the world. From the world. Okay? In fact, the guy that was especially gifted to build the world, do you know who his dad was? He wasn't an Israelite. He was from Tyre. Why does the Bible tell you these things? It's telling you that the tabernacle is the place where God is meeting with the world. When Solomon dedicates the tabernacle, he prays. And you know what he prays in his prayer? He says, Father, when the outside world comes to this place and they pray to you, answer their prayers. Right? So this concept was always going out to the courtyard. God was in this creation, just like from the beginning. He's overtaking the sea. He's overtaking the nations. Jonah goes to the Ninevites, and how does he get there? By boat, right? Right? That's not without purpose. When he gets thrown into the sea, why is he thrown into the sea? What gets dealt with in the depth of the sea? His sin. Sheol, he calls it. So, this is the idea that God's glory is going to overtake the world. And very often throughout Scripture, the world is typified by the sea. It's a dangerous place. But his glory is spreading. I want to give you some figures here. He doesn't want attention, but my dear mathematician friend James McLaughlin put these together for me. So just take a look at this. Earth has 196.9 million square miles of surface area. There are 27,878,400 square feet in a square mile. Earth has, these put together, Earth has 5.5 quadrillion square feet. That's a 5 with 15 zeros behind it. The tabernacle is 675 square feet. What does God say the kingdom of heaven is like? Or Christ, excuse me. It's like a mustard seed. It's very, very small, right? And you see this in the tabernacle, do you not? It starts out very small. How did Eden start out, right? Eden started out very, very small. Okay? So, you could fit, it's so small, you could fit over 8 trillion tabernacles on the surface of the earth. That's how small it starts. But I want you to watch something that you're supposed to do with the boring numbers the Bible gives you that you say, why are these in the Bible? So boring. Solomon's temple. So the tabernacle was 45 by 10 cubits, I believe. Yes. 45 by 10 cubits. Look at what, and 15 cubits high. Solomon's temple goes 60 cubit length, 20 cubits high, or 20 cubits wide, 30 cubits high. So what's Solomon's temple compared to the tabernacle? What's it doing? It's growing. Ezekiel's visionary temple, 500 cubit length, 500 cubit width. I have to study it closer to see if it gives you a height. The Garden City, Jerusalem, 1,400 mile length, width, and height. And that's the city of Jerusalem. Okay, now, consider that the measurements of Revelation, Randy Elkhorn says this, a metropolis of this size in the middle of the United States would stretch from Canada to Mexico and from the Appalachian Mountains to the California border. Okay? So I just want you to get an idea of the trajectory of the Bible. This is what's happening. God is always starting with His glory and He's moving out. Okay? Now, let's talk about Christ and us as we close. So, just as God's Spirit, which is the same word as wind, hovered over the waters at the beginning, okay, as He's about to subdue the waters, so you'll find that how does the tide start to turn with Noah? What happens? What's the big moment where it's like, oh, things are about to change, right? When he sends out a dove and it brings back an olive branch, okay? A bird, hovering, bird, creation, Noah, okay? Israel passes through the Red Sea as God's conquering Egypt and spreading His kingdom. What does Israel cross as they're going in to take over the Gentile nations in Canaan? And Joshua said, here's how you shall know that the living God is among you, and that He will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Jebusites. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is passing over before you into the Jordan. He's going into the Jordan to overcome the world. Now, you're going to think I'm really weird, but I think there's a lot to this. Are you ready? All right. So, you got the altar, and I talked with the guys on the golf retreat. So, you got the altar in the courtyard, and the altar was made so that the beast was to go like halfway in the altar. So you didn't see all of it, you saw some of it. Okay? The altar is like the mouth of God. It consumes the beast. It's offered day and night. And that's the idea. And the wine is poured out day and night. It's like the meal offering for God. Now, who does the beast represent? We talked about this last week. Don't let me down. It represents us. So who is God eating? You. He's eating me. He's consuming us. And I don't mean to get too graphic here, but then the priest takes out the ashes and that's the digestion, right? And you say, you're crazy. Do you know where he takes the ashes? Outside the courtyard, where excrement was meant to be taken. Okay? So but that's not you anymore. That's the old you. The old you's dead. He's gone. He moves. The new you became what? Smoke. You were transformed. You joined the glory cloud. You're completely new. All right? So what kind of animals does God eat all through the Old Testament then? Land animals, right? Land animals. Where do we see Jesus eating all the time in the New Testament? Where do fish come from? What's Jesus up to? He's taking the glory to the water, to the last place, to the waters beneath the earth. You say, oh, that's crazy. Why does Jesus do so much with the water? Does God just tell you he walks on the water to say he did something miraculous? Or if you connect all of these things, is God saying to you, he's taking my glory to the ends of the earth? And this is why he's intermingling with the Gentiles like he is. He's taking the glory to the outermost regions of the world. This is what he's up to. He's rebuking the sea. But yeah, he literally rebukes the sea and it becomes calm. But is that the end of it? Or is that an indication of what he's doing throughout the entirety of the world? Do you see? It's at one level simple, but at one level complex. God, through Christ, is up to overtaking the world. What does he do with the demons out of Legion? He throws them into pigs and he throws them into the water. He's ordering the entirety of creation. He's taking the glory to the furthest end that it was meant to be taken. What does Jesus say about the temple? He says, you filled the portion that's for the Gentiles with thieves and robbers. This temple was meant to go to the Gentiles, and you've stopped it short. It was meant to go all the way to the ends of the earth. And if this isn't enough, what does he say to the disciples? You will receive power when the Holy Spirit, who ordered the creation at the beginning, will come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. And so then should it shock us when this is what Paul's missionary journeys look like? He's ministering to the Gentiles. Where does he spend a lot of time? The water. He's overcoming the world. Now, I want to close with a reminder of how we overcome the world. It's from God's tent. It's very clear. When he tells you about his tent, where does he start? It's the very first thing he talks about. Now you are hurting my heart. You're hurting me deeply. What's he talk about? The Ark of the Covenant. Okay? And this is something that needs to be unforgettable. The way his glory spreads is by worship. The way the glory spreads is with him and with us in worship. Now, this becomes very clear in the way that they take over Canaan. Commentator Peter Lightheart draws attention to this. What would you say if there was the most significant battle that took place where God begins overcoming Canaan? Which battle would you say it was, or which overcoming? Jericho, I heard it out there. Yeah, it's the first one. It's very memorable. Stands out. And Lightheart goes out to say, he says, in books like ancient books like the Iliad, when it draws attention to battle, it draws attention to the heroes of the battle, right? The great conquerors and that sort of thing. It draws attention to the great acts of the Greek heroes. But when Joshua overtakes Jericho, what's really drawn attention to are all elements of worship. Of worship. He unpacks it. The greatest attention is not put on the warriors, but on the priests. They carry the ark. Trumpets are blown. It's the same ram's horn that's blown on the Day of Atonement. So there's this connection to worship with the ram's horns. The victory is arranged in sevens. The tabernacle is all about sevens. Creation is all about the seventh day. Jericho falls on the Sabbath day, the last day of the week of the siege. And this is what Light Heart closes with. When Israel worships God, He brings the walls down. When Israel worships God, He brings the walls down. When does Israel fail? Israel fails when Achan is attracted to something other than God. The moment that the mission of Israel, the mission of the church, gets off track when any of us or all of us are attracted to something other than God, the Ark of the Covenant. Worship fuels missions. If the church ever forgets that, it will cease to be a mission-oriented church. It will be formed in our own image. Worship fuels mission. How do we go to the nations? We worship. We worship with all our might. We focus on the Ark of the Covenant with all our might. And as we do that, the glory will exude, it will spread, and it will overtake the entirety of the world. Right at the very beginning, God gave to Adam and Eve the same things He tells the priests, which is to guard and to serve and rest. This is the idea. Adam and Eve were to guard the garden, but instead, Adam let in the serpent. And just like we eat with God, so the serpent became a diabolical high priest where you ate the serpent's food, right? You ate what he's telling you to eat. There's an exchange there. And as a result of that, it all goes to pot. We are to guard God's glory, which, friends, means that you're not to sin. You're to pursue His glory, which should remove sin. You're to guard it so specifically that when your brothers or sisters are in sin, you're to rescue them out of it. That's our call. We're to speak truth because we're guarding God's glory. It's our only hope. And then we're to serve. But we're to serve not the way the world serves. Jesus will say, the Gentiles, they have positions of leadership and they lord it over people. The best kings in Israel equip their people. Equip their people. It's not about them. The moment they start making it about them, the nation fails. So we cultivate God's kingdom by equipping our children. I cultivate God's kingdom not by me spreading it, by equipping you to spread it. I do my part which God gives me, but it's to equip. And then it's to rest. Rest in God alone. Israel is to rest in the fact that God is doing this. Our job is only to go where He calls us. That's it. And to follow His lead. And He will always equip us to do it. So, what do I hope you take away from this message? I hope you take away from this message that God is in the midst of overtaking the world. And you have a choice whether to be part of it or not. I encourage you to be part of it. It will make your face radiant. It will bring so much joy into your life that you will just be addicted to it. That's where the authors of Scripture are coming from. And that's where we're all meant to reside. With His glory. With His glory. It's to occupy your minds and your hearts day and night. I'll ask musicians to come.